The document resting on the polished mahogany table is printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock. It is entirely unremarkable to the untrained eye, just a standard piece of corporate stationery. But as I look at it under the cold, unforgiving glare of the boardroom chandelier, it carries the crushing weight of a human life. The ink on the signature line is still slightly wet, gleaming like a fresh wound against the stark white paper. It is a board censure. It states in the rigid, bureaucratic language of the banking consortium that David Aris, Collections Department head, is hereby removed from his position for gross administrative fraud. It states that Nia Hayes, branch manager of Branch 427, is fully exonerated of all embezzlement allegations, and it states that the physical integrity of the branch has been permanently restored. I sit at the far end of the long table. My hands are folded neatly in my lap. They are perfectly steady. Across from me, the board of directors is quietly packing their leather briefcases. They do not look at me. They do not look at the empty chair where David Aris sat just 10 minutes ago, his face pale and slick with sweat. The silence in the room is absolute, thick with the unspoken realization that they have just publicly executed their own proxy to avoid a federal audit. The air smells of expensive cologne, stale coffee, and the sharp, metallic tang of corporate fear. My name is Nia Hayes. I am a black single mother. I am a branch manager. And exactly 48 hours ago, I was a suspected felon, sitting in a freezing holding cell, waiting for a digital ghost to bury me alive. They tried to erase me. They tried to use a keyboard to rewrite my reality, to turn my life's work into a string of code that could be deleted with a single keystroke. They thought that because the vault's electronic log was controlled by a secure server in a glass tower downtown, the truth belonged to the server. They thought they could disable my biometric access, frame me for stealing millions, and watch me disappear into the prison system without leaving a trace. They forgot about the carbon paper. They forgot about the physical weight of the ink. They forgot that a machine can be hacked, but a human hand leaves a mark that no algorithm can scrub away. How did a branch manager force a private equity billionaire to publicly sign his own proxy's death warrant in a mahogany boardroom? The answer is not found in a dramatic shout or a tearful plea for mercy. It is found in a heavy, leather-bound vault log, a forensic metadata report, and the quiet, relentless accumulation of the physical truth. If you believe that a mother's truth should be written in ink, not erased by a keystroke, stay with this story. Subscribe, and let us walk through the vault door together, because the digital world is about to collide with the physical one, and the steel is going to win. But to understand why I would rather face a federal indictment than open that vault door, you have to understand what happened the day the vault lock stopped recognizing my fingerprint. You have to understand the men who built the vault and the men who tried to break it. My father did not work with money. He worked with the steel that held it. He was a vault custodian for a mid-sized regional bank. He was a large man with hands that smelled permanently of brass polish, machine oil, and black coffee. He believed in the physical reality of the vault. He believed that the heavy, circular door, with its massive steel bolts and complex mechanical tumblers, was a sacred boundary between the chaos of the world and the security of the community. When I was 12 years old, he would let me sit inside the vault after hours, long after the tellers had gone home. The air inside was cool, dry, and smelled of old paper, dust, and cold metal. He would trace the massive steel bolts with his calloused finger and look down at me with absolute seriousness. "Nia," he would say, his voice a low, steady rumble that vibrated through the concrete floor. "The computer tells you what the money is. But the steel tells you if the money is safe. Never trust a screen when you can touch the door. A screen can lie to you. The steel never lies." He died when I was 20. It was not a heroic death. It was not a cinematic standoff. It was a Tuesday night in November. A group of armed men breached the bank through the roof. They did not blow the door. They did not crack the safe with explosives. They used a stolen manager override code, bypassed the physical time lock, and commanded the digital system to open the vault. The electronic log showed the override was authorized by a senior vice president. The digital system commanded the physical bolts to retract. The heavy steel door swung open, and my father, standing inside to do the nightly physical count, was caught in the crossfire when the police arrived. The bank's internal investigation concluded that it was a system anomaly. The digital log showed the override was authorized, but the senior vice president was never charged because the digital log was deemed inconclusive by the corporate lawyers. The physical reality of my father's blood on the vault floor was buried under a mountain of encrypted server data and non-disclosure agreements. They paid my mother a quiet settlement and told her to forget. I became a banker because I refused to let a screen kill anyone else in my family. I wanted to be the one who stood between the digital ledger and the physical door. I wanted to ensure that the two always matched, that the physical reality could never be overwritten by a corrupted file. I spent 10 years working my way up from teller to head cashier to branch manager. I learned every camera angle, every audit protocol, every physical quirk of the vault door. I became the guardian of the steel. My daughter, Maya, is 8 years old now. She has my father's quiet observation and my stubborn, unyielding jawline. She is the center of my universe. Every time I balance the drawer, every time I verify a signature, every time I physically turn the dual custody key, I am doing it for her. I am building a fortress of paper and steel so that she can inherit a world where the rules actually apply, where a lie cannot simply be deleted. And Julian Sterling wanted to use my fortress to hide his dirt. Julian Sterling is a private equity billionaire. He is the founder of a vulture fund that buys up defaulted mortgages, forecloses on the properties with illegal tactics, and evicts the families into the street. He does not care about the community. He cares about the yield. And when his fund started generating massive, untraceable cash flows from illegal foreclosure kickbacks, he needed a place to wash it. He needed a bank branch where the manager would look the other way, where the physical cash could be deposited and digitally erased. He chose branch 427, and he chose David Aris to make me look the other way. In the bottom drawer of my desk at the branch, beneath a stack of compliance manuals and audit binders, is a heavy leather-bound book. It is the physical vault log. In an era of biometric scanners, cloud-based servers, and digital overrides, the bank still requires a physical carbon copy log for every single entry into the main vault. It is an archaic relic, a heavy brick of paper that smells of dust, binding glue, industrial ink. Every time the vault is opened, the manager and the custodian must sign the log, record the exact time, and note the purpose of the entry. The pressure of the pen creates a carbon copy on the second page, which is torn out and sent to the regional compliance office at the end of the month. I keep the book because it is the physical anchor of my reality. It is the steel my father talked about. When David Aris started pushing me to authorize unlogged cash withdrawals, when he started asking me to open the vault for special deliveries from Sterling's Vulture Fund, I did not argue. I did not shout. I did not march into the regional director's office. I just opened the physical log. I wrote down every single time he asked me to open the door. I wrote down every single time he brought in a canvas bag of cash that was not in the system. I pressed the pen down hard, ensuring the carbon copy was dark, clear, and undeniable. Aris thought I was just a compliant manager. He thought I was just a pair of hands that turned the dual custody key without asking questions. He thought that, because he controlled the electronic server, he controlled the truth. He forgot about the carbon paper. Digital ledgers can be rewritten by a password. A server can be wiped by a command. An algorithm can be programmed to lie. But carbon paper remembers the weight of the hand. It remembers the pressure of the pen. It remembers the exact moment the ink bit into the fiber of the page. You can delete a digital file, but you cannot delete the carbon. And I was going to make sure that when the digital ghost finally came for me, it would break its teeth on the physical steel of the truth. I do not carry the weight of this secret alone. I have Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable is 72 years old. She has lived in the apartment directly across the hall from me for 20 years. She is a woman of small stature, with silver hair always pinned back in a neat French twist, and eyes that miss absolutely nothing. She walks with a slight limp, the result of a fall she refuses to complain about, and she moves through the world with a quiet, unshakable dignity. Mrs. Gable is the guardian of my hallway. When I work late at the branch, staring at the physical log until the numbers blur, she is the one who watches Maya. She does not just babysit, she curates Maya's childhood. She teaches her how to fold laundry, how to read the bus schedule, and how to tell when a person is lying by looking at their hands. Every evening, when I unlock my apartment door, exhausted and smelling of the bank's sterile air conditioning, I hear the specific, gentle rhythm of Mrs. Gable's knock. 2 quick taps, 1 slow. It is the check-in knock. I open the door and she is standing there, holding a small, foil-wrapped package. "You are working too hard, Nia," she says, her voice a soft, raspy whisper that immediately lowers my blood pressure. She hands me the package. Inside is always something warm. A piece of baked ziti, 2 sweet potato pies, a container of chicken soup. "I am fine, Mrs. Gable," I tell her. I say this every day. I am never fine. The bank is suffocating me. The audit is looming. The vault feels like it is watching me. But I say it anyway, because it is the armor we wear for each other. She does not push. She just looks at me, her dark eyes seeing right through the branch manager facade, straight to the tired mother underneath. "Maya finished her math homework," she says softly, patting my arm with a hand that is warm and dry, "and she drew a picture of you. It is on the fridge. Eat your soup, Nia. The steel will still be there tomorrow." She walks back across the hall. The click of her deadbolt is the most comforting sound in the world. She is not my blood, but she is the bedrock of my community. She is the physical proof that I am not just an employee number. I am a neighbor. I am a mother. I am human. Because the corporate world is cold. It is entirely, ruthlessly digital. Julian Sterling and his army of lawyers look at the world through screens. They see data points. They see liability metrics. They see an algorithm that dictates how much dirty money can be washed through a single branch. They thought they could wash away my history with a digital cycle. They thought they could scrub the servers, delete the logs, and rewrite the narrative of my life in binary code. But they forgot the physical world. They forgot that every time a vault is opened, a physical mark is made. They forgot that the truth is not stored in the cloud. The truth is heavy. The truth is physical. The truth leaves a stain that no digital bleach can remove. They tried to disable my lock. They tried to erase my access, but the carbon remembers. And I am about to make sure they read every single word. The transition from a respected branch manager to a corporate hostage did not happen with a sudden, violent shove. It happened with an agonizingly slow, methodical tightening of a screw. The air inside branch 427 grew suffocatingly sterile, charged with the invisible, heavy static of surveillance. David Aris, the collections department head, began his campaign of psychological warfare not with accusations, but with micro-infractions. It started with the dress code. Aris would stand by the teller line, his tailored suit a sharp contrast to our navy blue uniforms, and quietly write me up for a blouse that was half a shade too light. Then came the schedule shifts. He would alter my vault dual custody rotations at the very last minute, forcing me to call in custodians who were already off the clock, making me look disorganized and incompetent in front of my staff. The isolation protocol was quietly enacted. My access to the regional manager's email chain was suddenly suspended for server maintenance, cutting me off from the very people who could verify my daily operations. But the true squeeze, the one that made my stomach churn with cold, metallic dread, was the arrival of the dirty money. It began on a rainy Tuesday. Aris walked into the branch, bypassing the customer line with the arrogant stride of a man who owned the building. He carried a heavy, unmarked canvas bag. He did not look at the tellers. He walked straight to my glass office, placed the bag on my desk, and slid a handwritten deposit slip across the blotter. "Deposit this into the suspense account, Nia," he said, his voice a smooth, dangerous purr that barely carried over the hum of the air conditioner. "It is a temporary hold for a vulture fund foreclosure settlement. Mr. Sterling requires it processed immediately." I looked at the bag. I could smell the faint, distinct odor of non-sequential bills, the scent of cash that had been hidden in floorboards and mattress boxes. It was untraceable, unlogged, and entirely illegal. The suspense account requires a digital authorization code from the regional office, I said, keeping my voice perfectly level, though my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I cannot process an unlogged physical deposit without a paper trail. Eris leaned forward, his eyes flat and devoid of any human warmth. The digital trail is being managed by my office. Your only responsibility is to open the vault, place the bag inside, and sign the physical log. Do not make this complicated, Nia. He was forcing me to become the physical custodian of his digital lie. If I refused, I was insubordinate, and he would fire me. If I complied, I was an accessory to money laundering, and when the federal auditors eventually found the discrepancy, I would be the one holding the bag. I chose to survive. I took the bag. I walked to the vault. I scanned my biometric print, turned the dual custody key, and placed the canvas bag on the steel shelf. Then I opened the heavy, leather-bound physical vault log. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the time. I wrote down the contents, and I pressed the pen down so hard that the ink bled through the top page, creating a dark, undeniable carbon copy on the second page. For 3 weeks, the bags kept coming. $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in dirty cash. And every single time I pressed the pen down. I was building a physical fortress in the dark, hoping it would be enough to stop the digital avalanche Eris was engineering. Then he took away my keys. On a Thursday morning, I walked up to the vault door to begin the morning cash armoring. I pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner. The screen flashed a harsh, unforgiving red. Access denied. I tried again. Access denied. Eris walked out of his office, a smug, thin smile playing on his lips. We are experiencing a glitch with your biometric profile, Nia. Audit is looking into it. Until it is resolved, you will need to have the head teller scan you in. The humiliation was devastatingly absolute. I had to stand in the middle of the bustling lobby, in front of my staff and my customers, and ask a 22-year-old teller to override my access to the vault I had managed for 5 years. I was being erased from my own branch. I was being transformed from a manager into a ghost. If you have ever stood in the quiet dark, feeling the walls of your livelihood closing in while the world methodically calls you incompetent, stay with this story. Subscribe and let us walk through the fire together. Because the squeeze was about to become a crushing weight and the clock was about to start ticking. The bottom did not just drop out, it was engineered, scheduled, and served to me on a silver platter. It happened on a Friday morning, exactly at 8 o'clock. The sky outside the bank windows was the color of wet cement, spitting a cold, miserable drizzle. I had just finished opening the vault, using the head teller's biometric scan to get inside, when the branch doors locked. The heavy glass doors clicked shut, and the shades were pulled down over the windows. Eris walked into the lobby, flanked by 2 men I had never seen before. One was a corporate security officer. The other was a lawyer in a sharply tailored gray suit, carrying a thick leather briefcase. The air in the branch suddenly felt brittle, like glass ready to shatter. Nia Hayes, the lawyer said, his voice clipped and entirely devoid of empathy. I am Mr. Allister, representing the banking consortium and Mr. Julian Sterling. Please step into the manager's office, immediately. My blood ran cold. The physical sensation was terrifying, a sharp, icy prickling at the base of my neck, followed by a hollow, sinking feeling in my stomach. I walked into the office. The air conditioning was blasting, making the room feel like a morgue. Eris sat behind my desk. He had taken my chair. Mr. Allister opened his briefcase and slid a single, crisp piece of paper across the desk. It was a printed screenshot of the electronic vault log. An internal audit conducted at 2 in the morning revealed a massive discrepancy, Allister said, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. The electronic server shows that between the hours of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. yesterday, your biometric scan opened the vault, and the system recorded the withdrawal of $50,000 in physical cash. The cash is missing, Ms. Hayes, and your biometric signature is on the digital withdrawal slip. The room spun. The air turned to brittle glass in my lungs. $50,000. The electronic log is fabricated, I said, my voice remarkably steady, though my hands were trembling violently at my sides. I did not withdraw that money. The physical vault log, the carbon copy, shows that the vault was only opened for the morning armoring. The digital system was manipulated. Eris let out a soft, mocking chuckle. The physical log is a secondary archaic record, Nia. The electronic server is the primary, legally binding audit trail. The server does not lie, you do. Alistair slid a second document forward. It was a settlement agreement coupled with a non-disclosure agreement. Mr. Sterling prefers to handle internal theft quietly to avoid the negative publicity of a federal investigation. Alistair said smoothly, "This is a voluntary resignation and admission of fault. You will admit to a clerical error resulting in a cash shortage. You will sign the non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, the bank will not press criminal embezzlement charges, and we will provide you with a severance package of $20,000. $20,000. The number hung in the freezing air, heavy and intoxicating. It was 6 months of rent. It was Maya's school tuition. It was a temporary shield against the abyss. All I had to do was sign my name. All I had to do was admit to a lie. All I had to do was let them bury my father's memory and my own integrity under a mountain of digital fiction. But there is a condition," Alistair added, his eyes locking onto mine with a predatory intensity. "The Regional Compliance Board meets tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to review flagged employee files. That gives you exactly 24 hours. If you sign this document by 8 a.m. tomorrow, the matter is closed internally. If you walk out that door without signing, we submit the electronic log to the State Banking Commission and the local police at 8:01 a.m. You will be arrested for felony embezzlement, and Child Protective Services will be notified. 24 hours. The ticking clock started in my head, a loud, relentless metronome counting down the seconds of my life. They were not just threatening me, they were cornering me with time. They knew that exhaustion, fear, and the ticking clock would break anyone. They expected me to look at the pen, look at the $20,000, and surrender my soul to save my daughter. My hand hovered over the table. The pen was a heavy, expensive metal instrument. It would be so easy to pick it up, to sign my name, to take the money and run. I closed my eyes. I felt the phantom weight of the heavy leather-bound vault log in my desk drawer. I felt the memory of my father's hand tracing the steel bolts. I thought of Maya, sleeping safely across the hall with Mrs. Gable. I opened my eyes. The terror was still there, but beneath it, something else was rising. Something hard. Something unbreakable. I did not pick up the pen. I placed my index finger on the document and slowly, deliberately pushed it back across the desk. It slid until it bumped against Alistair's knuckles. "I did not take the money," I said, my voice dropping an octave, resonating with a cold, fierce clarity that made Eris's smug smile vanish. "Your server did. I will not sign a lie to cover up your fraud." Eris's face hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated malice. "Then you have 24 hours to pack your life, Nia. At 8 a.m. tomorrow, the police are coming for you." I stood up. I did not say another word. I turned and walked out of the office. I walked out of the bank into the cold, miserable drizzle. I was at the absolute, suffocating bottom. But as I walked toward my apartment, I realized something crucial. They had given me a deadline. But in doing so, they had given me a battlefield. And I knew exactly where the ammunition was hidden. The apartment was suffocatingly quiet when I unlocked the door. Maya was at school, which meant the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. 23 hours left. I walked into my bedroom and pulled the heavy leather-bound physical vault log from the bottom drawer of my desk. I had managed to smuggle it out in my tote bag before Eris could confiscate it. I set it on the small, laminate dining table. I opened it to yesterday's date. There it was, the physical carbon copy proof. The vault was opened at 7 a.m. for the armoring. It was closed at 7:45 a.m. There was no 4 p.m. entry. There was no $50,000 withdrawal. The physical reality was absolute. But I knew the law. I knew that in a courtroom, a corporate lawyer would argue that the physical log was forged by me to cover my tracks, and that the electronic server was the infallible truth. I needed more than just the physical log. I needed to prove that the electronic log was actively manipulated. A soft, gentle rhythm echoed from the front door. 2 quick taps, 1 slow. I opened the door. Mrs. Gable stood in the hallway, holding a warm, foil-wrapped package. She took one look at my pale face, my trembling hands, and the dark circles under my eyes. She did not ask what was wrong. She just stepped inside, walked to the kitchen, and set the package on the table next to the vault log. "You look like you are carrying the weight of the world, child," she whispered, her voice a soft, grounding anchor. "Eat. The world will still be there when you are done." I unwrapped the foil. It was a slice of sweet potato pie. The smell of cinnamon and warm sugar filled the air, a stark, beautiful contrast to the sterile, cold terror of the bank. I took a bite. It tasted like home. It tasted like survival. "I have 23 hours before they send the police, Mrs. Gable," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "They framed me for stealing $50,000. The digital log says I did it. I have the physical log, but it's not enough." Mrs. Gable nodded slowly, her dark eyes missing absolutely nothing. "Then you need someone who speaks the language of the digital world, but respects the truth of the physical one. You need Tariq." Tariq was a forensic accountant who volunteered at the legal aid clinic down the street. Mrs. Gable knew him because he had helped her fight a predatory property tax assessment 2 years ago. He was a man in his late 30s, with a quiet, methodical demeanor and a brilliant mind for data architecture. An hour later, Tariq was sitting at my dining table. He did not look at me with pity. He looked at the vault log with deep professional respect. He wore a simple sweater, and his hands moved with a calm, deliberate precision as he set up his laptop. "I cannot fight this battle for you, Nia," Tariq said, his voice a low, steady rumble that immediately commanded the space. He looked me directly in the eyes, his gaze fiercely respectful. "I am an accountant, not a lawyer. I cannot represent you. But I can show you how the machine thinks. I can give you the map. But you have to drive the car." He did not take over. He did not tell me what to do. He simply opened a specialized software program designed to read the deep, hidden architecture of digital files. "When a digital ledger is altered, it leaves a footprint," Tariq explained, pointing to the screen. "Eris thinks he just changed the numbers and saved the file. But the system records the metadata. It records the exact time the file was modified and the user ID that authorized the modification. If Eris edited the log to frame you, his digital fingerprint is on the overwrite." He handed me the mouse. "You are the branch manager. You have the administrative override password for the branch server. I need you to log into the regional portal, pull the raw metadata for the electronic vault log from yesterday, and extract the version history." I took the mouse. My hand was steady now. The heavy, suffocating blanket of defeat was lifting, replaced by a quiet, fierce solidarity. I typed in my credentials. I navigated through the secure portal. I found the electronic vault log. I right-clicked the file and selected Properties. I clicked on the Version History tab. The screen loaded. A list of file modifications appeared. I scrolled down to yesterday's date. There was only one modification recorded after the vault was closed. I leaned in, my eyes scanning the dense technical text. The modification was made at 6:15 p.m. The user ID was not mine. "Tariq," I whispered, the adrenaline suddenly spiking in my blood, hot and electric. "Look at the user ID." Tariq leaned in, adjusting his glasses. His eyes widened slightly. The user ID that authorized the digital withdrawal of $50,000 was not Nia Hayes. It was D. Eris. But it was the timestamp that made my breath catch in my throat. The file was modified at 6:15 p.m. 6:15, Tariq murmured, a slow, deeply satisfied smile spreading across his face. "Nia, what were you doing at 6:15 yesterday?" I looked at the physical vault log. I looked at the carbon copy. I was in the lobby. I was helping a customer with a wire transfer. The security cameras in the lobby record continuously. I was on camera the entire time from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Tariq sat back in his chair. The quiet triumph in the room was deafening. "Eris made a fatal error," Tariq said softly. his voice ringing with the absolute certainty of the law. He thought he was fighting a simple teller. He forgot he was fighting a branch manager who knows the physical reality of her own floor. He put his own digital fingerprint on the alteration, and he gave you the physical alibi to prove he wasn't even in the vault. I looked at the clock on the wall. 20 hours left. The digital fabrication was bleeding. The trap had snapped shut, not on me, but on the hand that built it. I picked up my pen. It was time to write the ending. The dining table had vanished beneath a sprawling topography of thermal paper, printed camera logs, and heavy leather binders. It was a physical map of a digital crime. The air in the apartment was thick with the scent of black coffee, the sharp tang of highlighter ink, and the quiet, focused tension of people racing against an unforgiving clock. The radiator in the corner hissed softly, a steady, mechanical heartbeat that grounded me in the physical reality of the room. Tariq sat across from me, his eyes scanning the glowing screen of his laptop. He was not just looking at the numbers. He was reading the architecture of the server. His fingers moved across the keyboard with a calm, deliberate precision, navigating the hidden layers of the bank's digital infrastructure. 14 physical vault receipts, Tariq murmured, his voice a steady, grounding anchor in the quiet room. 7 lobby camera logs, 21 metadata entries. We are building a cage, Nia. We just need to find the exact bar he missed. I rubbed my eyes, the heels of my hands pressing hard against my aching temples. My fingers were stained with the gray dust of carbon paper. The physical vault log lay open in the center of the table, its pages heavy with the weight of my father's teachings. The smell of the old paper, the binding glue, and the industrial ink was intoxicating. It was the smell of truth. He claims I withdrew $50,000 at 4 p.m., I said, my voice raspy from disuse. But the physical log shows the vault was locked at 7:45 a.m. The steel was untouched. The carbon copy is dark, clear, and undeniable. Tariq nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the screen. The physical log is your anchor, but the board will argue it is secondary. They will say the electronic server is the primary audit trail. We need to prove the electronic log was actively manipulated. We need to find the ghost edit. Before he could continue, the soft, familiar rhythm of the check-in knock echoed from the front door. 2 quick taps, 1 slow. I opened the door. Mrs. Gable stood in the hallway, holding a large, insulated thermal bag. She did not ask about the ticking clock. She did not ask about the corporate lawyers. She simply walked past me into the kitchen, her slight limp a testament to her enduring resilience, and began unpacking the containers. The rich, warm aroma of roasted sweet potatoes, brown sugar, and cinnamon instantly pushed back the sterile, anxious smell of old paper and cold electronics. It was the smell of home. It was the smell of survival. You cannot fight a war on an empty stomach, child, Mrs. Gable said softly, her voice a gentle rasp that immediately lowered my blood pressure. She placed a steaming mug of tea in front of Tariq, then handed me a heavy plate. She pulled up a chair in the corner of the kitchen, not to the table, but close enough to be a silent sentinel. She opened a paperback novel, the soft rustle of the pages, providing a strange, comforting white noise. She was keeping the world at bay while we rebuilt my life one receipt at a time. I took a bite of the sweet potato. It was tender, spiced perfectly, and tasted like safety. I looked at Maya, sleeping peacefully on the living room rug, wrapped in a fleece blanket. The crushing weight in my chest loosened, just a fraction. They could take my branch. They could take my biometric access. But they could not touch this. They could not evict me from this community. Mrs. Gable looked up from her book, her dark eyes seeing right through my exhausted facade. They think because they built the machine, they own the truth, she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of 70 years of survival. But the machine only knows what we feed it, Nia. You fed it the steel, he fed it the wind. The wind always blows away. I smiled, a small, genuine curving of my lips. Okay, I whispered, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. I pulled the electronic server logs closer to me. Let us find the wind. Tariq smiled, a small grim curving of his lips. He typed a command into his software. The screen flickered, revealing the deep hidden version history of the electronic vault log. "Look at this," Tariq said, his finger pointing to a line of code. "At 2:15 p.m. yesterday, a manual override was entered into the system. The user ID was masked, but the system recorded the exact terminal location. It was accessed from the collections department head's office." I leaned in, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. 2:15 p.m. What did he change? He altered the vault status, Tariq explained, his voice dropping to a fierce, urgent whisper. He changed the vault status from locked to open, and he inserted a fake withdrawal request for $50,000, timestamped at 4 p.m. He built the digital ghost in the afternoon, but he backdated the withdrawal to cover the afternoon armoring schedule. If you believe that the physical truth will always outlast the digital lie, stay with this story and subscribe. Because the machine is about to make a fatal mistake, and the ink is about to speak. The clock on the wall read 5:30 p.m. Only 14 hours remained until the Regional Compliance Board met. Only 14 hours until David Aris handed my file to the police. The ticking of the second hand was a physical weight, pressing against my eardrums with every pass. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft scratching of Tariq's pen as he documented the metadata. I was carefully folding the physical carbon copies of the vault log, placing them into a heavy canvas tote bag. Every fold was a deliberate act of defiance. Every crease was a physical anchor. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from the bank's secure corporate portal. The subject line was stark, unforgiving. "An order of deft and intent to prosecute." My breath caught in my throat. The air in the room suddenly felt brittle, like glass ready to shatter. I opened the email. The screen glowed with the cold blue light of corporate malice. It was a formal legal notice, signed digitally by David Aris and the corporate legal team. It stated that an internal audit had discovered a massive discrepancy in the electronic vault log. It explicitly detailed the timeline of the alleged theft. I read the words aloud, my voice trembling slightly, then growing steadier with every syllable. At 2:15 p.m. on Thursday, a minor system glitch occurred in the electronic vault log, resulting in a temporary status error. This glitch was automatically corrected by the system at 2:30 p.m. At 4:00 p.m., the vault was opened via the biometric scan of Nia Hayes, resulting in the unauthorized withdrawal of $50,000. I stopped. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Tariq looked up from his laptop. His eyes were sharp, unyielding. "Read it again, Nia. Read the time of the glitch." 2:15 p.m., I whispered. The realization dawned on me. Cold and sharp as a blade, he put it in writing. Under penalty of perjury, he just legally documented the exact time he fabricated the digital ghost. Tariq slammed his hand on the table, not in anger, but in triumph. He panicked. He realized you were pulling the metadata. He used his admin access to do a massive over-edit on the server. He wiped the original 2:15 p.m. entry, replaced it with a fake system glitch note, and backdated the withdrawal to 4 p.m. He tried to erase his footprint. I looked at the email. It was no longer just a threat. It was a confession. It was a signed, notarized, legally binding admission of the exact lie he had told. He had taken his digital ghost and anchored it to a physical timestamp. He had given me the weapon I needed to kill it. But there was more. I scrolled down to the bottom of the email. Furthermore, the physical vault log submitted by Ms. Hayes is hereby declared fraudulent and inadmissible. As the electronic server confirms, the vault was physically opened at 4:00 p.m. The sheer arrogance of it was suffocating. He was not just framing me, he was criminalizing my physical evidence. He was trying to make the carbon paper disappear. The fear was a cold, physical thing, wrapping around my lungs, making it hard to breathe. It was the specific, suffocating terror of poverty, the feeling of the ground dissolving beneath your feet. If the board rejected the physical log, I was going to prison. Maya was going into the system. I closed my eyes. I felt the phantom weight of the heavy, leather-bound vault log in my tote bag. I felt the memory of my father's hand tracing the steel bolts. I felt the warmth of Mrs. Gable's sweet potato pie still lingering on my tongue. I opened my eyes. The terror was gone, burned away by a sudden, fierce, and terrifying clarity. "He made a fatal error," I said, my voice dropping an octave, resonating with a cold, undeniable steel. "He tried to erase the 2:15 p.m. edit, but the server writes a tombstone for every deleted file." Tariq nodded, his eyes blazing with a fierce, undeniable light. "He deleted the file, but he did not delete the backup. The deep server backup still holds the original metadata. We just need to pull the version history from the off-site archive." I took the mouse. My hand was perfectly steady. The heavy, suffocating blanket of defeat was gone, replaced by a quiet, fierce solidarity. I typed in my credentials. I navigated through the secure portal. I accessed the off-site server archive. I found the electronic vault log. I right-clicked the file and selected Recover Deleted Versions. The screen loaded. A list of file modifications appeared. The loading bar moved with agonizing slowness, each pixel a testament to the digital ghost trying to hide its tracks. I scrolled down to yesterday's date. There it was. The ghost edit, the original uncorrupted metadata from 2:15 p.m. I leaned in, my eyes scanning the dense technical text. The modification was made at 2:15 p.m. The user ID was not masked in the backup. It was DRS, but it was the terminal location that made my breath catch in my throat. The edit was made from the executive boardroom terminal. 2:15 p.m., Tariq murmured, a slow, deeply satisfied smile spreading across his face. "Nia, what was Eris doing at 2:15 p.m.? I looked at the physical vault log. I looked at the carbon copy. Then I looked at the branch schedule I had printed out earlier. At 2:15 p.m., Eris was not in his office," I said, my voice ringing with absolute, undeniable clarity. "He was in the executive boardroom on the regional floor. He had his weekly yield meeting with Julian Sterling." Tariq sat back in his chair. The quiet triumph in the room was deafening. "The executive boardroom requires a biometric scan to enter," I continued, the pieces falling into place with the heavy, satisfying clunk of a vault door locking. "If Eris was in the boardroom at 2:15 p.m., he could not have been at the vault, and if he was in the boardroom, his biometric scan would have logged his entry into the room." I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the regional security desk. I used my branch manager override code to access the public executive badge log. It was a basic security protocol, designed to track foot traffic in the boardroom. The screen populated. I scrolled to yesterday's date. There it was, David Eris, biometric scan. 2:12 p.m. Executive boardroom. "He was in the room," I whispered, the adrenaline spiking in my blood, hot and electric. "He was sitting across from Julian Sterling, drinking sparkling water, while he used the boardroom terminal to fabricate a $50,000 theft. He built the digital ghost while the billionaire was watching." Tariq stood up, pacing the small kitchen, his hands running through his hair. "This is it, Nia. This is the kill shot. The physical carbon copy proves the vault was locked at 2:15 p.m. The executive badge log proves Eris was in the boardroom at 2:15 p.m. And his own legal notice proves he tried to cover it up with a fake system glitch. The trap had not just backfired. It had snapped shut on his own hands. The electronic phantom was dead. The ink held the truth, and now it was going to speak. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8 hours left. I picked up my pen. I pulled a fresh sheet of paper toward me. I was not just a branch manager anymore. I was the auditor of his reality. "Draft the response, Tariq," I said, my voice steady, resonant, and entirely my own. "Tell them we accept their timeline, and then we are going to introduce them to the executive boardroom log." The silence in the boardroom was not empty. It was heavy, suffocating, and thick with the unspoken realization of ruin. I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, my hands resting lightly on the heavy, leather-bound physical vault log. The leather was worn, the pages thick with the weight of 1,000 truthful entries. The smell of the old paper, the binding glue, and the industrial ink filled my senses, grounding me in the physical reality of the room. Across from me, David Eris sat slumped in his chair, his tailored suit suddenly looking like a costume 2 sizes too large. His skin was the color of old ash, and a fine sheen of cold sweat glistened on his forehead. Beside him, Mr. Allister, the corporate lawyer, was meticulously packing his briefcase, his movements sharp, jerky, and entirely devoid of their former arrogance. At the far end of the table sat Evelyn Mercer, the chairwoman of the regional board of directors. She was a woman carved from granite and old money, with silver hair pulled back into a severe chignon and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She held her fountain pen, hovering over the cream-colored cardstock of the board censure. The air in the room was so cold it burned my lungs, but my hands were perfectly steady. I could feel the phantom weight of my father's hand tracing the steel bolts of the vault, his voice echoing in my memory, reminding me that the steel never lies. Let the record reflect. Evelyn's voice cut through the sterile air, crisp and unforgiving, that the physical vault log submitted by branch manager Nia Hayes conclusively contradicts the electronic server audit. The carbon copy proves the vault remained sealed from 7:45 a.m. until the morning armoring. There was no 4 p.m. withdrawal. There was no $50,000 shortage. She paused, her piercing gaze shifting from me to Eris. The silence stretched, tight as a piano wire. Furthermore, the forensic metadata report, submitted under penalty of perjury, demonstrates that the electronic ledger was manually altered at 2:15 p.m. The digital footprint belongs to the collections department head. Eris opened his mouth, a desperate, ragged sound escaping his throat. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. It was a system glitch, he stammered, his voice cracking. The smooth oil of his corporate persona entirely evaporated. The server experienced a latency error. I was merely attempting to reconcile the digital shadow to protect the bank's assets. You were not reconciling a shadow, Mr. Eris, I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave, resonating with a cold, fierce clarity that made him flinch. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The truth was loud enough. You were building a ghost. You used the executive boardroom terminal at 2:15 p.m. to overwrite the vault status, but you forgot that the executive boardroom requires a biometric scan for entry. The security logs show your badge scanned into that room at 2:12 p.m. You were sitting across from Julian Sterling, drinking sparkling water, while you used his private terminal to frame me for a theft that never happened. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a digital empire colliding with physical steel, and the steel winning. I could see the exact moment Eris realized he was entirely alone. The billionaire who had promised him protection was not in the room. The lawyers who had threatened me with prison were packing their bags. The digital ghost he had built to bury me had suddenly turned around and wrapped its hands around his own throat. Mr. Allister snapped his briefcase shut. The sharp click echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. He did not look at Eris. He looked at Evelyn, his face a mask of professional indifference. "The consortium has no further comment," he said, his voice flat, abandoning his client to the abyss. "We will cooperate fully with the federal compliance audit regarding the Vulture Fund's cash deposits." Evelyn Mercer did not smile. She did not offer a word of comfort or a speech about corporate integrity. She simply lowered her fountain pen to the cardstock. The scratch of the nib against the heavy paper was a beautiful rhythmic sound, a steady metronome counting down the end of David Eris' career. She signed her name with a heavy, deliberate finality. She pulled a heavy brass stamp from her desk and pressed it firmly onto the page. The sound of the stamp hitting the ink pad was a sharp, ringing bell of absolute justice. She slid the document across the polished wood toward me. "Board censure," Evelyn said quietly, her eyes meeting mine with a profound, deeply respectful acknowledgement. "David Eris is hereby removed from his position for gross administrative fraud. Nia Hayes is fully exonerated. The physical integrity of Branch 427 is restored." I reached out and took the paper. It was warm from the printer. It was heavy with the weight of the truth. The digital ghost was dead. The ink held the record, and my father's steel was safe. Walking out of the corporate tower, the evening air felt entirely different. It was not just a breeze. It was a physical warmth that seeped into my aching shoulders, melting the frost that had settled there for weeks. The elevator ride down had felt like a descent from a sterile, air-conditioned purgatory back into the land of the living. When the glass doors of the lobby slid open, the city around me was loud, chaotic, and beautifully alive. Tires hummed against the damp asphalt. Horns blared in the distance. The air smelled of roasted nuts from a street vendor and the sharp, clean scent of impending rain. It was the smell of the physical world, the world I belonged to. I kept my hand in my coat pocket, my fingers tracing the crisp, folded edges of the board censure. It was just a piece of paper, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever held. It was the sound of the ticking clock finally winding down to zero. I did not take a cab. I walked the 20 blocks to my apartment, my steps light, the crushing weight of the felony accusation evaporating with every stride. I watched the neighborhood come alive in the twilight. I saw the familiar faces of the bodega owner sweeping his sidewalk, the teenagers laughing on the corner, the mothers pushing strollers toward the park. They had no idea what had just happened in the glass tower downtown. They did not know that a branch manager had just fought off a billion-dollar ghost with a leather-bound book and a carbon copy. And that was exactly how it was supposed to be. The world kept turning, not because of the digital lies of billionaires, but because of the physical, quiet endurance of people like us. When I unlocked my apartment door, the space was bathed in the golden, slanting light of the late afternoon. The smell hit me first. The rich, intoxicating aroma of brown sugar, cinnamon, and baked peaches. It was the smell of survival. It was the smell of home. Mrs. Gable was sitting at the small kitchen table, her silver hair catching the golden light. She was not knitting today. She was just sitting there, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, looking at the door. When she saw me, she did not ask how the board meeting went. She did not need to. She looked at my face, and she saw the peace that had returned to my eyes. The deep, hollow shadows that had haunted my face for weeks were gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable stillness. From the living room, the sound of crayons scratching against paper echoed softly. Maya was lying on her stomach on the rug, deeply focused on a drawing. She looked up, her dark eyes bright and curious, reflecting the warm light of the lamp. "Mama, you are home early," she said, her voice a sweet, innocent melody that cut through the lingering echoes of the sterile boardroom. I crossed the room in 3 strides. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around her small, solid frame, burying my face in her shoulder. I breathed in the scent of her hair, the smell of baby shampoo and crayons. She was safe. We were safe. The wolves had been turned away at the door. The digital phantom could not touch her. The steel had held. "I am baby," I whispered, my voice thick with a quiet, overwhelming gratitude. Mrs. Gable stood up, her slight limp a testament to her enduring resilience, and walked over to the stove. She lifted the lid off a cast-iron dish, and the steam curled into the air, carrying the sweet, warm promise of peach cobbler. "I figured you would be hungry," Mrs. Gable said softly, her scarred hands wiping the counter. She did not offer pity. She did not ask for the details of the battle. She just provided the warmth. "Sit down, Nia. The war is over for today." I sat at the table. I pulled the board censure from my pocket and laid it flat on the laminate surface. I ran my fingers over the red ink of the brass stamp. It was a physical anchor, proving that the nightmare was truly gone. Later that evening, after Maya was asleep, her breathing soft and rhythmic in the quiet apartment, I walked into my bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. I pulled out the heavy, leather-bound physical vault log. For weeks, this book had felt like a heavy, suffocating responsibility. It had felt like a weapon I had to carry into battle, a reminder of the blood and the pain of the bank. I had kept it hidden, guarded it with my life, sleeping with it under my bed. But tonight, as I ran my fingers over the dark, indented carbon copies, the weight was gone. It was no longer a weapon. It was just a record. It was just the truth. I closed the book. I did not put it back in the drawer. I placed it on the highest shelf in the living room, right next to Maya's crayon drawings. It was time to stop hiding the steel. It was time to let it breathe. I turned off the kitchen light. I walked down the short hallway to Maya's room. I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep, listening to the steady, peaceful rhythm of her breathing. The clock on the wall was just a clock again. The ledger was balanced, and I could finally rest. We live in a world that is increasingly obsessed with the digital. We are told that data is absolute, that algorithms are objective, and that the cloud is an infallible judge of our worth. Corporations and billionaires use this digital illusion to control us, to rewrite our histories, and to gaslight us with the stroke of a keyboard. They want us to believe that if it is not on a screen, it does not exist. They want us to believe that when the server says we are guilty, we must simply bow our heads and accept the punishment. They look at the world through spreadsheets, seeing only liability metrics and profit margins, entirely blind to the physical reality of the people who actually keep their empires running. But the physical world is stubborn. The physical world leaves a mark: the carbon copy in a leather-bound log, the biometric scan of a boardroom door, the wet ink on a board censure. These are not just pieces of paper or lines of code. They are the physical proof of our existence, our labor, and our dignity. When the institution tries to gaslight you, when the algorithm tries to erase you, do not look at the screen. Look at your hands. Look at your records. Keep your paper. Keep your receipts. Because when the digital ghosts try to rewrite your reality, the physical truth will always be the anchor that holds you down. Working-class dignity is not given, it is documented. The tellers, the managers, the custodians, the drivers, the nurses. We are the ones who touch the steel, who press the pen, who feel the weight of the physical world, and no billionaire can buy a physical reality that refuses to be erased. If you believe that a working mother's truth should be written in ink, not deleted by a keystroke, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that honor the quiet, relentless strength of those who keep the world turning. I want to hear from you. In a world where everything is stored on a phone or a computer, what is a physical piece of paper or an object you kept that ended up saving you? Is it a receipt, a contract, a letter, or a logbook? Tell me about it in the comments below. Let us celebrate the physical things that keep our history alive and protect our truth. Stay grounded, keep your records, and I will see you in the next story.